Good morning. Thank you for having us. This is Nicole speaking, and I'll just give you a brief look at what we'll be sharing today. Jan will be talking first about what career education looks like for our students today, what we're hoping for in this new curriculum, and the opportunities for our students. In the second part of our presentation, I will be talking about where we are in the process of the development of the curriculum. To conclude the presentation, Angie will talk about what's next in career ed, and we look forward to your questions at the end of this session. So without further ado, Jan, take it away.
Thanks, Nicole. Good morning, everyone. So my job this morning is to set the stage, and Nicole and Angie will give you some more detail on things as they unfold. As you can see by that first slide, we want to start by trying to get people to start thinking about reimagining what career means and looks like in a different world. So the big idea around imagining career is to try to start to think of our job as educators is no longer preparing kids for something, but preparing them for anything. We know their road's not going to be straight, and we know their job will not be one. So how can we really help kids navigate their way through a world that is completely different than it once was and completely different from what it will be? The other hope is that the career curriculum can be a catalyst for bringing together various pieces of the transformation agenda, experiential, relevant, personalized, community, relationships, those kinds of things. So we found this definition of career that really lends itself to the reimagining piece. So if we can start to think about no longer just talking about a job, an occupation, or a profession, but starting to ask kids not so much what they want to be, but who do they want to be, what kind of lifestyle are they seeking, and how can they make an impact. And once you go to that place, you can really see that this changes or can change the focus of career education. So if you think about it as a life story, then it makes sense then that we're beginning this career curriculum at kindergarten. We don't want it to be something that we only start to talk about when kids are in the graduation learning years. So it changes our role as teachers to more of a coach and a mentor, and start to guide kids to create their profile of who they are and what they can do over time. And that begins in kindergarten. So these kinds of things are what we're hoping for around our role as an educator. So how can we help kids find, make sense of the world and make informed choices over time that will actually benefit their future? We know there is lots of stress and anxiety in the current world. You see that in your classrooms and in your schools. We know that the mental health issues are through the roof. So how can we help students manage that stress and that anxiety and just help them continuously adapt to a rapidly changing world? And I think most of all, and we all know this as educators, somehow taking on that role of giving them hope for their future. We know that if we can give kids hope, that equals confidence, and confidence equals success. So again, I'm setting the stage for a reimagined role of an educator as well. I think another thing that we want to do in this career curriculum is help kids find their fit in the world and sift through all that is out there and available to them. How do we help them keep balance in their life with so many places and so many people of influence around them? I last week was meeting with recruiters from post-secondary, and they were telling stories about sitting with kids and their parents and trying to get some ideas around what they were passionate about, where they wanted to go, etc. And the parents were answering for them. The parents wanted them to do things, go places, and what they said was you could see in the kids' eyes that it definitely, they simply had no passion for that. So how do we help them navigate all those influential outside pressures, sometimes those coming from parents? And I think this is big. How do we help them take pride in what they do and maintain a sense of who they are? I think this is where assisting them in building a meaningful profile of who they are and what they can do in their future is critical. This is also where we can really guide them to self-reflect on their competencies, where we can know their story. And maybe this career curriculum will be a catalyst for how we can begin to reimagine how we structure high schools so that we can know the story of every child. We need to start asking ourselves, can we know the stories of every child if we have 200 students? Maybe we can start to think about cohorts of kids with cohorts of teachers. Maybe that could even drive some reimagining around cross-curricular opportunities, where we could set up our systems with 4 teachers and 120 students shared, or maybe even reimagine or revisit some of the teacher advisor models that we've tried in the past. We have 8 credits here to be creative with knowing the story of every child as a piece of that. I think that could really lend itself to some new kinds of structures and systems in high schools. So with a reimagined definition of career and a reimagined role of the teacher, what are we hoping for? We're hoping that this development of a student's picture of themselves and self-reflection of their learning and their passions begins early. We know that that's going to look different by age, but I think if we keep in mind the new definition of career, we can only imagine what this kind of adult support and the new definition of the teacher support could look like over a student's educational journey. And definitely this career curriculum will be a place for the core competency development to be overt and to be obvious. And it'll definitely be a place to help kids build their profiles of learning over time. So what could we use to help kids build that profile as a learner? We need a venue of some kind to support students in documenting authentic and meaningful evidence so they can represent themselves as a learner. Some kind of portfolio that shows a profile of their learning, and it can be electronic, it can be all sorts of format. The format is not the important piece, but some kind of portfolio or otherwise that can be built from year to year as they grow and develop their proficiencies and their interests. So what could that look like? What could it help kids do? We want to help them document, sort, and represent their emerging sense of self, learn to gather evidence, learn to document, and come out with something that's a true curriculum vitae, something that's built over time and has value in their post-graduation world, both with employers and with post-secondary. And I can tell you we're currently working with some post-secs to see where and how this portfolio that represents who a student is and what they can do could be valued as part of an entrance criteria. We're also working with employers to determine how this could be part of getting selected for career opportunities, as more and more of them are saying we need to see who these students are and what they're capable of, and how can we see authentic evidence to show us they're equipped with the core competencies needed to be successful. So we hear from big companies like Google, Microsoft, Amazon, all of those, a lot of those folks saying, we don't care what your one-dimensional transcripts say. Show me who you are and what you can do. So I think that puts back to us around how can we help kids actually have something in their hands as they exit our system that will help them be able to show that. So we pulled just this one little piece out of the career education curriculum to show some competencies that are actually in the curriculum. And I'd like you to try to think about overlaying the new definition of career and kind of a different role of the teacher onto those curriculum competencies. And if you do that, you can see that it's a great opportunity to shift the learning over to the student, with the teacher now as the support and the guide and the person who asks the questions. And later, Angie will show a little bit more about, what some of those questions could look like as we help kids create themselves a profile that's meaningful and of use to their future. Tied in with that, we want to give you our current thinking for a capstone. And we also, just so you know, there's lots of opportunity for you to still have input and share your thinking about all the things that we're talking about. But how can this profile of learning that I've just described, how can that development of something like that help shape a student's capstone? How can we allow for several capstone opportunities along the K-12 journey so that it's not just a one-time thing at graduation? So really, opportunities along the student's journey to go deep in their learning about something they're passionate about, or to tell their story. If we allow those opportunities over time, it can't help but support their journey towards becoming an educated citizen. So currently, just some thinking, and again, Angie will talk a little bit more about some possible frameworks for organizations, but if you think about capstone as an opportunity for kids to create a personal integrated plan for post-graduation, and we've put just those choices related to career, finances, education, health, and well-being as being but some, right? So an opportunity for them to reflect on their personal learning and growth, not just what they've learned inside of school, but outside of school. Something that's pulled together in some sort of a project as a self-reflection demonstration, and does not have to look all one way. So what could those projects look like for a variety of kids who are comfortable in a variety of venues? It could be a presentation, it could be a YouTube clip, it could be something they've created, etc., etc. But basically what we're trying to do is excuse me, find a way to begin to show the connections of this capstone project to post-secondary and world of work, where the next adventure requires one to be self-reflective of their learning, almost above all else. We're in a world where success first and foremost will depend on one's ability to learn, not on one's accumulation of knowledge, where learning is the work. And in working with post-secondary and employers, this is one of the major skill sets that they are saying will determine success. So the role of the teacher. So having said all of that, our reimagined career curriculum will require a reimagined role of the teacher. If you take this reimagined definition of career and capstone and take on the role of coach and mentor, and then place that on top of the curricular competencies of the career curriculum, the hope is that you will be able to guide students to their own reflection on a variety of learning opportunities, both inside and outside of school, and help them gather authentic evidence from various contexts for learning to create a profile of a learner that clearly will reflect an educated citizen on their way to success in a rapidly changing world. Our goal as educators is not to write their biography based on what we've observed, but to put the pen in their hands and help them to author their own autobiography. So you can tell, and you will continue to tell, we're really passionate about the possibilities of the role that the career curriculum and the people who grab it can play in helping kids to set themselves up for their best life chances. A great opportunity sits before us, and now what I would like to do is hand it back to Nicole to talk a little bit more about where we are in the development of the career curriculum, and we'll be back at the end to answer any questions. Thanks so much, and over to you, Nicole.
Thank you, Jen. Currently, the structure of the learning career education curriculum is presented within 8 credits. The learning is captured under 2 umbrellas, career life education and career life connections. These can take place anytime within creative structures during the graduation years and respond to local contexts. Just taking a brief look at the 2 courses, they both share common big ideas, 6 big ideas at the moment, focused on holistic understandings, and the content is organized into 3 areas: personal development, connections to community, and career life plan. The curricular competencies is where we see some difference. In career life education, we expect to see an initial career and education plan with some post-graduation goals, and in career life connections, work experience of 30 hours, a personal integrated plan for post-graduation, and a capstone project. The curriculum development team had a specific intent and vision when they put the credits together. Just as Jan mentioned the reimagined role of the teacher, we should also be considering the reimagined role of the student. Relationships are key, and face-to-face interactions with a mentor, with each other, and to the community are essential. So where are we at? The draft curriculum has been posted since October 2016, and since that time we have been collecting feedback as well as questions and ideas of how we can strengthen the curriculum as we move into a revision. All of that has led to our focus on the following: to address the feedback received to date, align the learning within the 8 credits, expand elaboration, develop samples of delivery models, advise on a guide to support implementation, and finally consider a model to support capstone. An important component of curriculum development is the feedback we receive from the field. Each piece of feedback is recorded and used by the team to guide the shape of meetings and the changes needed in the draft curriculum. To date, the feedback can be summed up in 3 broad themes. First, flexibility in delivery is essential. The field was very clear. We got considerable feedback regarding the need for autonomy within districts and schools to deliver the curriculum based on the local context and needs of students. Secondly, information and clarification about capstone. Teachers across the province expressed the need for more information and clarity around the capstone piece. How could they approach it? What can it look like in different settings and contexts? The team will be working on developing an implementation guide this fall. Finally, the third piece of feedback was the need for more information on the shifts in career education credits. A flurry of emails came in regarding this. The current proposed structure is 8 credits throughout the graduation years. However, the field has provided a lot of feedback and suggestion regarding the seemingly fixed structure, so we will be revisiting it, and we can expect to see some response to this, particularly reflected in sample delivery models. And now on to Angie, who will take us through what's next.
Thanks, Nicole. As Nicole mentioned when she was referring to career life education and career life connections, at the present time, these look like courses, but that really isn't the intent. They're really about umbrellas for learning. And so when we're thinking about this and we're approaching where we're going next with this work, one of the things that we're interested in doing is exploring a bit of a model that could be a structure like the one that is on your screen right now, to unify the 8 credits of career education that take place within those graduation years. The key components in this model that we have for you here include things like engage, explore, decide, prepare, and implement. And these components, they would cycle for students throughout their career learning. So it really would become an opportunity to engage in these pieces repetitively and as many times as required to be able to lead towards students being able to make decisions about where their next steps lie. When exploring a unifying model, you might wonder why this would be important for career education. A few reasons to note would be that a unifying model could be an approach to create a cohesive career education learning experience for students within the graduation years. It could also help us guide learning in the directions that lead to capstone, and it also would create some opportunities for further alignment in career education and could inform a revision for K-9. Specifically, we think a unifying model could provide some structural pieces that we might want to consider for the big ideas. How might that impact the broad understandings that we have indicated now that students should be working towards? We also believe that that could have an impact as organizers for curricular competencies in 10 to 12. And additionally, provide a framework for capstone. We think that there are opportunities to make further connections to core competencies through a unifying model as well. So you can see that there are numerous reasons why this would be something we'd be interested in, and we're really looking forward to having the opportunity to talk with the career education team about this and where it might lead us next. So in thinking about using something as a unifying model for learning in career education, we just have a small table that we've put together to think about some of the key components that happen right now within the curriculum at 10 to 12. We have things like the personal integrated post-graduation plan. We know that core competencies play a key role in both career life education and career life connections. And of course, we have capstone. And so in thinking about those pieces, we've been exploring some inquiry questions that might be able to flow with these to help support students as they think about the direction that their capstone might take. And I hope that you can see from this slide that it really illustrates that capstone, it's not about a project, it's about a process. And as Jan had mentioned, not all students will approach capstone in the same way. But as you look through the left-hand side and just see the kind of questions that are being asked here of students, that an inquiry model could really help engage them as they explore where their next steps are and how that's going to lead them towards the directions that they'd like to pursue within their life path. With respect to timeline, right now that we are looking at all curriculum teams, including career education, getting together for team meetings this fall and into early spring. There'll be a process to be able to review and analyze all the feedback that's been received, as Nicole had mentioned. Revising curriculum drafts based on the feedback. We'll be working towards translations into French, and for spring 2018, working towards posting final curriculum. All of this leading towards July 2018, when curriculum will be ready for use in the 2018-19 school year. The piece that we'd like to emphasize within the timeline is that there is still time for input and feedback, and we genuinely welcome your ideas. We know that this is a really important area of learning, as Jan had mentioned. It's a place where a lot of different pieces of the transformation are going to come together, and your ideas and your feedback in helping us how these ideas might be situated within local contexts would be really helpful. So when thinking about what else is needed as we approach the work with the curriculum team, we're asking ourselves questions around what do school districts need, what are teachers going to need, and what do students need? And in the last drafts that were posted, we've mentioned things like delivery models that Nicole referenced earlier. We've heard feedback already on things like more information for capstone, and it makes us ask, do we need some more specific guidelines around capstone then? We've also explored with you some of the inquiry questions that we've been thinking about to be able to support students. But our question really is, what else is needed there? And again, your input and your feedback and ideas on these pieces would be really helpful. Where we're at right now, we believe that we have an opportunity. And when we treat career as an act of living and learning, then career education, it becomes the frame around all learning. It can become a catalyst that will help our students find their way and chart their course. We know this is a very complex and ever-changing world, and all curriculum work is really about improving life chances for students. So the three of us, Jan, Nicole, and myself, we're really happy to share with you the opportunity that we see within career education curriculum. We welcome you to this new vision that we talked about today. We look forward to your input and your ideas for career education, and we thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning, everyone. Well, thank you to Jan, Angie, and Nicole for a very informative presentation. Really appreciate the detail that you went into. And I think what you'd offered is very exciting opportunities for young people. I think really shifting the phrase of that question from what do you want to be to who do you want to be in terms of the subtle shift in language, but a very powerful approach in supporting our students. And so, team, if you don't mind, we just have some time for a couple of questions. I know you might have been monitoring the question box in there, and I have a couple of questions on behalf of our members. So just in terms of nuts and bolts details, one question is, will this year's grade 11 students require the 8 career credits and capstone for graduation?
You mean the students who are currently in grade 11 right now?
Currently in grade 11, yes.
Go ahead.
No, they wouldn't. The curriculum right now is in draft, so no, that wouldn't apply to them this year.
Okay, good. We have a number of offshore school leaders who participated as well today. So I think they're kind of curious about the context of their work is quite different. Has there been consideration about sort of how offshore schools can be supported in implementing the capstone project?
Those are pieces, sorry, it's Angie. Those are pieces that we are definitely going to be exploring with our area in the ministry that supports offshore schools, and know that it will perhaps need some different things. And we look forward to being able to learn what those are so we can best support students in that situation.
And I think if I could just add to that, it's because it's flexible, it doesn't have a one way of looking. I think it really provides opportunity for people to be creative in whatever context they're in. To just get to the big idea around the purpose of capstone, and that is just allowing kids to be able to tell their story of what they've learned throughout their journey. So whether that's offshore or onshore, I think people will really start to get creative around ways in which kids can demonstrate those kinds of things.
So just one final question before we wrap up this morning. So as you can guess, although it's October of 2017, particularly high school principals and vice principals are looking to incorporate this in 2018. Are you aware of any, is this being piloted in any districts right now? Or are there teachers out there who are working towards this and might be able to share some of the successes they've had with the field?
Yes, this is Nicole speaking. We have had several districts provide samples to us of how they're exploring it within their districts and working with their teachers. And we're a part of our meeting coming up this fall, or meetings, is to find the best selection of those samples and get them ready to share with other districts on our website so that teachers can get a look at what's being done.
Great. All right. And with that, I want to thank Jan, Angie, and Nicole for presenting this today. I found it to be a very informative and inspiring presentation on career education. As I mentioned to our participants, we weren't able to get to all the questions, but I will forward them to our presenters today, and we will also forward the PowerPoint presentation and their responses to those questions out to our participants a little later in the week, hopefully. And thank you again to our presenters. I found it just to be a very informative presentation, and I know there's going to be lots of interest in this initiative as we move through this school year. And so with that, I want to thank all of our participants for being a part of it today. We do have another webinar on Thursday. For those of you who are interested, we'll be talking about math and science, classroom assessment on Thursday between 4 and 4:30, and Angie is back for that, and Nancy Walt will be joining us as well. So thank you to our presenters, thank you to all of our participants. Have a great day, everyone.